Welcome to Creatacast with your host, David Welch. Today's show is about poetry chapbooks, and it's also about staying relevant for yourself, like in the creative field, because there's a huge demand of work out there. I mean, people are reading more, they're investing more time in literature. I mean, everybody I know has a book out or coming out or in the works. I mean, just the field of literature itself is expanding, and it's also jumping around when it comes to kind of the different areas of business. I mean, so you have books coming out all the time about self-help. You have books coming out about business management, business leadership. You have books coming out about personal exercise regimens and different diets, and comedy books and poetry books and fiction novels and sci-fi and detective mystery and romance. I mean, there's so many different genres. Just a little bit of everything's coming out right now. And I mean, there is a whole underground movement right now of self-published authors just really getting their stuff out, and they're getting a following. They're in fact stealing some of the market from a lot of the big authors. Now, the big authors are getting the contracts, they're querying for an agent, they're doing everything according to them right. But there are some independent authors out there that are making a killing. They're making waves via their own marketing on Twitter, their own marketing on Amazon and Facebook and even Snapchat. I mean, I've seen marketing everywhere for people's books. Not everybody has the best work out there. I've read some standalone published books or independently published works, and they're just, some of them fall short, but some of them land really well with me. So it's hit or miss, but at the same time, there's a gold mine of quality work out there, and especially when people are wanting to read like a quick romance and a western, and believe it or not, I mean, there is a huge demographic of people there that have a following now. They go to Comic-Con, they go to book cons, they go to just book signings in general, they go to book conventions. I mean, just you name it, there's just a niche for what they do and where, what type of book they produce. And, I literally just dropped off at, not Bookman's, what is it called? I think secondhand books, or half price books. So I took like 9 boxes of books to Half Price Books, and they have a wealth of books. They kind of gyp you on kind of giving you a fair trade when it comes to the value of your books, because they'll turn around and sell a book they got from you for $10, and you got like a quarter for the book, if that. So they kind of gyp you in that sense. I mean, you can independently sell your books back on Amazon and recoup some of the cost. In fact, that might be the way to go for most people. I just didn't have the luxury of waiting. I had 9 boxes and a couple totes full of books, and it was just too much, and I've been lugging them around for over a decade, so it was time to get rid of them and liquidate. That leads me to my second position of this podcast. It is okay. It is okay to relinquish your library. There are people in need of those books. Now, if I were a little bit more ingrained in my community, I can see myself setting up a little library where someone could literally like pass by and grab a book if they need to. And I'm talking like, we have an elementary right down the road. We have we just don't have enough resources where people can get that really cheap entertainment. There are a lot of people hunting for entertainment, a lot of people hunting for the next good read, and we live in a post Harry Potter world where You have right after Harry Potter, the tail end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, you had an emergence in reading and rallying behind characters and storylines like Hunger Games, Maze Runner. Just a myriad of books flew off the shelves during that time period. A revolution in reading literacy and getting young adults to read really started early on. I would say, like R.L. Stine really hit his stride in the 90s, when I was a kid, and I love those books. I was a huge fan. Great works came out in the 90s. It was just harder. Much, much harder as an author in the 90s and early 2000s to reach your audience. I'm pretty sure so many good authors got put by the wayside and kind of lost steam because they weren't getting picked up by a major publisher. Because publishers really have this nose in the air kind of mentality of, you don't meet our standard or all type of publishing, and that's why you got all these independent publishers popping up and books are flying off the shelves. And it's a good time to be an author, but it's also a time where you have to kind of weed through some bullshit to get to the good ones. Like I said, I read some, I'm not going to name names, but I read some independently published authors, and they suck. They're horrible. They're trash. I'll never pick up another book by them, at least not at this stage in development. I can't say never, because there are authors that get better. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to name names, but some of the work, and sometimes we have an author where we love their stuff, but the book we fell in love with isn't necessarily the kind of consistent work they produce afterwards, if that makes sense. So, sometimes that's the case. I want to say, for me, that's definitely like, what was that one? Author James Rollins. Like, I loved Amazonia. I loved the Black Order. I loved those books. But then I read the novelized version of like Indiana Jones, and I was like, what? It just wasn't even the same level of writing, in my opinion. And you have some authors that do that. Some authors will come out a book like the first Twilight, I think, was like the most consistent. It had the really good build up of the story, and then after that, the books kind of like gave you a lot, but they didn't give you any better level of writing. They really didn't. And here's what I mean by level of writing. When you have a really well-known author whose diction is super simple, it's good. It's actually really good. In fact, it's harder to be super simplistic than it is to be wordy, because we always feel as authors we get this creative flair if we're eloquent in our delivery of the material, but the best writers are very, very simple. In fact, you have in writing, in literature right now, the English writers are friggin' good at this. They are good at giving you detail and delivering dialogue, and there's a certain battle cadence that they give you that American authors don't have consistently. Now, the more well-known authors give you this, but the authors that are hit or miss are the ones that are too wordy. I really don't want to stay in a room for 30 minutes if it's not giving me anything. You see this sometimes with like freaking Tom Clancy novels, and like you love the detail, but you also don't like as much details that they give you. You want more. For me, I can live in historical fiction because you get a very good balance of dialogue and action. Point in case, Simon Scarrow. If you read the Under the Eagle series, you're getting action. Just the flow is amazing. You're getting action, great dialogue moments, and then you have like lovable characters you end up just like falling in love with because you like their style. You know, based on the way this character is written, how they're going to react in a situation. Point in case, you have Kato and Macro, who are those, who are the main protagonists in the Eagle series by Simon Scarrow, and you know Kato is a cerebral person. You also know Macro is. If I had to put a face to Macro, it'd be like Jason Statham. If you had Jason Statham playing a Roman legionnaire, that's Macro. Like, I really couldn't picture anybody else when I was reading them. It just fit in a very, very English, like, sounding Macro, like bollocks, and very, very intense in his fighting. And you can tell that he's been a soldier for a long time. Whereas you got Kato as a very kind of a suave intellectual individual, where you can picture he's a very young cat, super young guy, but he's also very cultured in a way. So for me, there's a guy I met in college who was this way. He carried himself in a certain way that I've always pictured for that character. And really, like, whenever I envision characters, it does not have to be a friggin' movie star. It doesn't have to be a very well-known person. It just is, for me, it's just somebody that fits the bill mentally. It could be a friend I know. It could be an actor. It could be an actress. Whatever have you. That's who I envision in the role. So Simon Scarrow is a very good example of an author who gives you simple diction, but also complex stories in the level of delivery. You, with Cato and Macro, you travel all over the Roman Empire. You go to Britannia, you come all the way. You go through Gaul, you go to Britannia, you come back, you go to, you go to Rome, you deal around in Rome for a little bit. You go battle pirates. There's so much that he gives you, and you love it. You battle freaking what do you call them? Gladiators. You have so many good villains too that you get. So with that series, the Eagle series by Simon Scarrow. Now you get a little bit more of eloquent. I wouldn't say eloquent. You get more of a detailed verbosity from Connie Golden, who also is a very, very fantastic writer. He gives you a lot of details, a lot of action to weed through, and his dialogue is very on point. I'd say, just gauging. He very Hemingway-esque when it comes to the dialogue delivery, because it's you got to keep in track who's speaking too, because it's dialogue, and then you'll get 2 or 3 paragraphs of giving you the details, and it's dialogue. So he's got a very, very good cadence in how he does his stuff. But again, another English author, good example of an American author that really delivers this kind of prose would be, I gotta lean towards even a nonfiction author. Laura Hillenbrand is very good at using simple diction and a very easy way to explain things, but deliver a very complex, heartfelt story. If anyone's ever read Unbroken, and you encapsulate the life of Louis Zamperini, you're just like, you're enwrapped in that novel or in that book until you're done. You don't let go of it. You don't put it down. You just knock it out. You could even get that way with when I read Blood Meridian, when I read The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy is one of those authors that is an American example of somebody who delivers that level of cadence, that level of writing to the reader, where it's, again, very simply written but very complex in the delivery of the story. Who used to write like that before he passed was the hitman himself, who wrote Jurassic Park and Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton was that. He was that type of author before that became a very consistent thing. Authors that, to me, deliver too much detail and not enough dialogue a lot of the time would be like Stephen King, Anne Rice. Dean Koontz, depending on the novel, I mean, it really depends. Sometimes he overdoes it a little bit on the delivery of the dialogue. Sometimes he overdoes it on the delivery of the details. I mean, when I read Phantoms, I was like, this is a very good mix. That was like one of the books that I was like, okay. But then you get into the Odd series, and you just way too much action. You know, way too much going on without a lot of speaking. But then some novels are better that way. It really depends. I read a series. I can't remember the author, but it was Justine, and I'm really trying to remember the name of the books. I'm gonna remember, but anyways, you have stories that are like that. For me, I mean, I think a very good balance, a very good battle rhythm to your storytelling. Orson Scott Card in the sci-fi realm gives you that very good mixture because he leads with dialogue. A lot of his stories are tied up between the characters. You rely so heavily on the dialogue to really narrow down what's going on, because in science fiction you have to allow the brain to catch up to what's going on technologically, because of when Orson Scott Card wrote Ender's Game. And we now live in a time where a lot of it we can very well picture now that we've read books like Ready Player One, and we've seen a cinematic version of that. We really get a good mind's eye of how Ender's Game, and we've even seen the movie now, get an idea of how we can envision it. It took a long time for that movie to come to fruition, but I think it was done okay. I wouldn't have put Harrison Ford as Rackham, not Rackham, but he was Mazer Rackham. I don't think that was him. God, man, my brain's overdoing it today. But anyways, so let's talk about poetry chapbooks. Poetry chapbooks and publishing those are becoming increasingly popular, because a poetry chapbook is about 30 to 40 pages of poetry that really hone in on a certain theme or a certain vision for the book. Now, there are much longer collected works of poetry by a certain author. You know who's really good at doing larger collected works of poetry? Stephen Dobbins. Stephen Dobbins fucking kills it when it comes to fiction, when it comes to his poetry, because you're getting a very, very good look at an author who brings it all. I mean, with Stephen Dobbins, you get the 1-2 punch. Sherman Alexie, when it comes to fiction, you're getting very consistent level of storytelling, and you get these little tales that really they get you to buy into what that mentality is by Sherman Alexie. You learn that he's kind of cynical. He's got a very cynical worldview, but I mean, given the history of the people in Arizona and the Native Americans, you really understand. You start to understand. You don't fully understand, but you start to understand. And if you have not read Tonto and the Lone Ranger, Fist Fight in Heaven, really need to give that a go. You really need to read Sherman Alexie. If you really want to get into good quality prose and poetry, he's got a mixed bag. Stephen Dobbins' mixed bag delivers it all. Those two. Now, for me, I've had to go back to the drawing board because I was going to release a book, but I had to go back to the drawing board because after getting the book off to my editor and getting my very trusted readers to read my material, I learned that I was not delivering consistency, continuity, and they workshopped the shit out of my poetry, and it came back with, for me, a level of writing a level of writing I don't want out there. Let's just say that. My poetry definitely needed to be workshopped before throwing it on the publishing rounds, before I gave it to my editor, I really should have done my due diligence and thought about my word choices and my poetry a little bit more than I did. So I've had to push my book back. I mean, we're damn near into we're going on into July with my book not out, and I was trying to get my book out Aprilish. But no, it didn't happen. Didn't happen the way I wanted it to. But that's okay. It is okay to get your novel, to get your poetry book back, all marked up, all with better word choices. Somebody who cares for you took a look at your shit and was like, you know what, hey, don't do this yet. Wait till you have that creative eye that really catches what you want to deliver. So I'm very happy that happened for me. But again, I've read great poetry books. Lena, this young lady that I follow on Twitter, she killed her poetry book. I'm glad I bought it. I'm glad that I was able to check her book out, and if I find it, I've had to hide my books because my wife wants me to get rid of everything. So I'll find it. I think it's in one of my backpacks. But like I said, just stay on that battle rhythm when it comes to your poetry books, your poetry chapbooks. Please keep your chapbooks small. I'd say 25 to 40 pages, not any more than that, because people, to be quite honest, don't invest a whole bunch of time and energy into poetry unless they're a literature major. They really don't. Some people like very brief little, like I met a street vendor who was selling his poetry in Vegas, and very simple booklet. You grab it. I mean, you donated between $5 and $10, whatever you felt he deserved after you read maybe 2 or 3 poems. Kind of got a brief taste, and if you wanted to pay $5 to $10, you could do it, or you could just keep walking. That was up to you. That guy was making money hand over fist because it was nuanced enough to say, hey, I don't mind buying this because I want to check the rest out. But it was also the delivery. Hey, it's up to you. But he had dozens, and it was very thin print, little booklets. Couldn't have been more than 15 poems, but you paid $5-10 for it. On the spot, you got the book, you got a little signature, boom, you're good to go. And it sat on my shelf until I gave it up at the bookstore. So, did I like it? Did I use some of those poems to deliver in my classroom? Yeah, I did. I had to, because it was an example of an author plying his trade and doing what he had to do. There are a lot of ways to set up shop when you're an author. Suzette Howe, who wrote Broken Before Battle, her niche is very unique. She goes to MMA fights locally here in Phoenix and Tucson and even Los Angeles and Vegas, and she sells her book because her book is very good in the sense that it's an interview / story of some of your favorite MMA fighters. A lot of the MMA fighters that she picks from Broken Before Battle are MMA fighters that fight out of Alliance Gym in San Diego, but now she's got some of the Arizona fighters in there for her next book coming up, and that's going to be very popular. She's going to be able to go to the bookstores around here and sell those books. Very unique niche, very unique opportunity for her, and she can have, and you can, the way it's done, you can do volumes, because there's a lot of fighters, a lot of people that really deserve that interview. They really deserve that level of care when it comes to their story, because every pro MMA fighter has a unique story that led them to be essentially a modern day gladiator, where they're putting it all out there in the arena. You got wonderful stories, you got amazing stories of triumph and heartache, and you just have to buy the book. Broken Before Battle, Suzette Howe. Now, I'm doing a lot of dropping for a lot of these authors. They're my favorite authors. I'll endorse them all day. Part of what Creatacast is about is ensuring that young authors get their day. So if you want to send me a copy of your book, you by all means can. Shoot me an email or hit me up in Twitter. My Twitter is at dwelch9627. My email, dwelch9627@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to take a look at your book, talk about it on Creatacast, because what I have not been successful in getting and what I hope to get in the future are submissions. I would love to read your work live on air, but the way I think I'm going to do it is I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to read a passage. I'm going to read, of course, I'm going to email you, get your permission first. I'm not going to just do it. And I'm going to have to give you credit in the video because this is going to end up on YouTube. So not only are you listening to Creatacast, you're going to be able to go to my page on YouTube, which is David the Sun Devil, and find this video, find the audio, and line it up if you want to, or just watch the YouTube video. Absolutely. A really cool note, coming up here July 4th, we have Stranger Things Season 3. Very excited. I did see Godzilla, so Millie Bobby Brown has been on my mind. She is a very, very talented actress. Finn is amazing. You got love the kids from Stranger Things. Those guys are amazing. Very good actors, up and coming. Not only are they behind the camera, but they have been on stage as well, some of them. So it's wonderful acting. You've got such a great storyline. You got some great producers and directors, and it's just a great work. It's one of those Netflix originals I'm very thankful in getting into, very thankful, and really exploring. Kind of like Black Mirror. Black Mirror is freaking amazing. I can't remember what season I'm on. I love it though. Like, it reminds me very akin to how The Outer Limits made me feel in the 90s. Like, we are expanding your television. We delude 1,000 images. Whatever that saying was, I can't remember in great detail, but it was freaking amazing. And the stories left you, they were kind of noir. Some of the stories leave you like not satisfied, and that's okay. The film that I saw recently, Cold Pursuit, really did that for me. It was one of those films that you had a lot of satisfaction, but then it left you kind of unsatisfied. But it was okay because it was fucking awesome. It was a good movie. Liam Neeson knocks it out of the park. The other actors in the film do very well. I mean, it's just one of those movies you can you get the macabre hilarity of it. You feel for the father, you feel for the mom, you feel for the kid, you feel for everybody in that story, but then you laugh when people get fucked up. You're like, ha, gotcha, bitch. You should have known that was coming. And then the villain, I don't think I've ever seen too many films with this guy, but the head villain in that film, Viking, was fucking hardcore. Kind of a fucking, I would say it harkens to what's that damn movie with Christian Bale? What, that movie where he's a fucking serial killer? I mean, damn, this guy had that kind of crazy flair to him, and it was like, damn. He could be brutal, he could be just odd, so like, that was a good movie. Cold Pursuit. Like I said, Godzilla was good. I was very impressed with the fighting in that. And just remember, I'm not excluding creatives, I'm not pigeonholing creatives into a small box of writing. If you write plays, I want them. I want to be able to read this. I will do a fucking table reading for you right here. And I'll get into character. Fucking let me. I love reading plays. I love reading scripts. If you want to get me a script, even if it's just a treatment, you don't have to give me the whole thing. Just give me like the first, 5 pages, first 5 minutes of your film. Let's see how that craft looks when somebody's reading those lines and they're delivering it on the screen, not necessarily the way you want, but it's a good indication of how it may be delivered. So, or maybe read. I do very much like that. Poetry, I love reading poetry. If you're going to send me poetry, fiction, or anything, guys, don't send me any more than 10 pages. So dwelch9627@gmail.com. I prefer Microsoft Word or PDF. And please, please, please make it in a font I can read. I would like Arial or Times New Roman, and please 12 to 14 font. That way it's easy for me to read, separate the story, separate the poetry. That way I can really delineate where the beginnings and ends are. Because I read a book lately that was a poetry book, and I really didn't like the flair of it, because I think it was intentional the way they did it, but some of the poems rapped. They went from like, and it really, like, I can't remember the author. I mean, this is how mad I was reading the book. Is you had like a little piece of poetry at the top of the book, and then you turn the page, and it was the other half of the sentence, and you were like, not liking this, not really getting into it. I don't. Like, I like foreign poetry like the next guy, but give me something I can, enjoy and read. So a lot to behold when it comes to writing. The writing community is huge. I think more people do more writing on Twitter than they do in their actual work. That's just real. And I hope you guys are listening to this, on Twitter. I hope you guys really get a chance to review Creatacast today. But it's okay. I really love my writing community. I love interacting with you guys. Please tune into Creatacast. I'm going to really, really make a concerted effort to get more video out there. I do want to read more material. Like I said, I haven't had an opportunity to do a whole lot of writing myself, because the jobs that I've been doing, though creative, though writing, have not really given me a lot of leeway to do my creative work. But that's okay. I was in a mode where I was okay with my work being off to the editor, but now since I got my work back, my novel fucking definitely needs a few chapters rewritten, totally. My poetry book, there was a good 4 poems that did not need to be in there, and I had to go rework my game, rework how I'm going to do the book in order to make sure that, like I said, the continuity stays the same, and it's the same theme throughout the book. So again, like I said, my streaming life, I am definitely shooting to release actually in August, and Linked, my young adult fiction novel, back from the editor, but definitely needs a rewrite. Again, looking towards August. August seems to be a good solid time frame for me to stay in my creative works and work on that, and also get some things together here at the house. So love everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Please tune in to Creatacast next week as we dive into Stranger Things Season 3. We're going to talk about not just cinematically how we were able to view Stranger Things and what we thought about what we see visually, but I also want to talk about the level of writing that you get, the level of dialogue that you get from the characters, and they deliver so well that you forget that, hey, somebody thought that shit up before they started doing it. So again, love you all. Tune into Creatacast next week. We're going to talk about Stranger Things. We're going to talk about Kindle and Kindle Direct Publishing. I definitely want to do a whole segment dedicated to Kindle Direct Publishing, the benefits and the drawbacks to Kindle Direct Publishing, and I also want to talk about a different direction that I would like to go with the channel, and hopefully by then I have some of your guys' books to read and invest into Creatacast. So partnerships that I developed a long time ago did not come to fruition that I really wanted to, but this show will morph. It will be more dynamic. It will be more organic, and it's going to keep going. I just love doing this for you guys. I want to get more into mechanics. I want to get more into showing rather than telling. I want to be able to show you guys where you guys hear my voice and you guys see me going to work, in Microsoft Word, giving you examples of a free write, giving you examples of a forum poem, and working through some of those technical difficulties, because I think that is where I'm going to win the hearts and minds of my creative writing community. So be ready for that. My twin brother, comes into town next weekend. I am super excited for him to be in town. He's going to show me how to do some of the stuff that I'm envisioning for my YouTube version of my show. And then when it comes to the podcast, I'm just going to be extremely detailed in the way I deliver those mechanics. That way you can still follow along, even though if you might be just tuning into me via the phone or whatever method you do. But again, love my podcast listeners, love my writing community. Wish you the best of luck today and in the week to kick ass, take names, do whatever it is you got to do. Please, please, please write at least 1,000 words this week. Get your work done. Love you.